Imagine handing your entire life savings to a complete stranger, smiling while you do it, and then thanking him for the privilege. Now imagine that tens of thousands of intelligent, educated, deeply skeptical people did exactly that, willingly, eagerly. This is not a story about stupidity. That is the most uncomfortable truth about financial fraud. The victims are rarely fools. They are doctors, lawyers, professors, even professional bankers who spend their careers analyzing risk. And yet, one after another, they walked straight into the trap with open eyes and open wallets. So here is the question that should keep you awake tonight. If the smartest people in the room can be fooled this completely, then what exactly makes you so sure that you are immune? Because the honest answer is that you probably are not. Over the next several minutes, I am going to dismantle the dark psychological machinery behind history's greatest financial scams. Not the surface mechanics, but the deep mental triggers the con artists exploit. By the end, you will recognize these weapons being used on you in real time, and I promise you this. The final chapter contains the single most dangerous psychological trick of them all, the one that even fraud investigators admit still works on them. Stay with me, because understanding it might one day save everything you own. To understand modern fraud, we have to travel back to the year 1920, to a charming, smiling immigrant in Boston named Charles Ponzi. His scheme was so elegant, so devastatingly effective, that we still use his name to describe the trick a century later. Ponzi's pitch was almost laughably simple. He claimed he could exploit differences in international postal coupons to generate guaranteed profits, promising investors a 50% return in just 90 days. 50%. In 3 months. A return that should have triggered alarm bells in any rational mind. But here is the genius, and the horror, of it. The early investors were paid exactly what they were promised, not because Ponzi had any real business, but because he simply handed the new investors money to the old ones. The money was a magic trick, and this is where the psychology begins to bite. When those first investors received their incredible payouts, they did not stay quiet. They told their friends, their families, their entire neighborhoods. They became unpaid, fanatical salesmen, and their genuine enthusiasm was completely impossible to fake or resist. Think about the tension building here. Every dollar paid out as profit was a dollar that needed to be replaced by 2 more dollars from new victims. The entire structure was a mathematical countdown to collapse, a bomb with a lit fuse disguised as a gold mine. Ponzi knew this. He understood that the scheme could only survive as long as new money flowed in faster than old money flowed out. It was not an investment. It was a desperate, escalating race against arithmetic itself, and arithmetic always wins eventually. Within months, Ponzi was taking in millions of dollars, the equivalent of hundreds of millions today. People were mortgaging their homes to invest. The frenzy was total. And then, inevitably, the river of new money began to slow to a trickle. When it finally collapsed, Ponzi left thousands of families financially destroyed. But the scheme that bears his name never truly died. It simply evolved. And that raises a chilling question that I need to answer in the next chapter. If a trick this transparent, this mathematically doomed could ensnare an entire city, then what is the actual psychological mechanism that switches off a smart person's natural suspicion? What is the invisible lever being pulled? The answer is more disturbing than the scam itself. Here is something that will reshape how you see every con. Fraudsters do not sell investments. They sell trust. The financial product is just the wrapper. What they are really manufacturing with surgical precision is the irrational, overwhelming feeling that you can rely on them. Psychologists have identified several mental shortcuts, called heuristics, that our brains use to decide who to trust. These shortcuts kept our ancestors alive. But in the modern world, they have become open doors. And the con artist is the burglar who knows exactly where every door is. The first weapon is authority. We are biologically wired to obey and believe people who appear to be experts. A title, a confident tone, an expensive suit, an impressive office. These signals bypass our critical thinking entirely. whispering that this person knows more than we ever could. Consider how scammers manufacture authority. They print glossy brochures. They rent prestigious addresses. They quote complex financial jargon that you do not fully understand, and that incomprehension itself becomes proof of their genius. The less you understand, paradoxically, the more impressed you become. The second weapon is even more powerful, and it is called affinity fraud. This is the deliberate targeting of tight-knit communities, religious groups, ethnic communities, professional circles, military veterans. The fraudster becomes one of you, sharing your faith, your language, your values, your handshake. And here is the cruel tension at the heart of affinity fraud. The very trust that makes a community strong becomes the weapon used to destroy it. When a respected member of your church vouches for an investment, doubting it feels like doubting your entire community. Imagine the social pressure. Everyone around you is investing. The pastor is involved. Your closest friend just bought in. To refuse is not just to question a financial product. It is to insult your people, to set yourself apart, to risk your belonging. This is why affinity scams are so catastrophic. They do not just steal money. They turn friends into recruiters, neighbors into accomplices, and they leave behind communities so poisoned by shame and betrayal that many victims never even report the crime out of sheer humiliation. So we now understand the levers, authority and belonging. But knowing the levers exist is not the same as understanding how a single individual could build a machine that pulled them on a global scale for decades without being caught. Because there was one man who did exactly that. He weaponized trust so perfectly that he fooled banks, regulators, celebrities, and the most sophisticated investors on the planet for nearly 40 years. His name was Bernard Madoff, and his secret was the opposite of what you would expect. Bernard Madoff ran the largest Ponzi scheme in human history, stealing an estimated $65 billion from his clients. But here is the part that breaks everyone's brain. Madoff did not chase his victims. His victims desperately chased him, and that was the entire trick. Think about the standard scam. The fraudster begs you to invest, pressures you, creates urgency. Madoff did the precise opposite. He made his fund exclusive, almost impossible to enter. He would even reject potential investors, turning them away as if they were not worthy of his genius. Can you feel the psychological judo here? By acting reluctant, by pretending he did not need your money, Madoff flipped the entire dynamic. Suddenly, you were not the customer to be convinced. You were the supplicant, begging to be allowed into an exclusive club. This exploits a deep human bias known as scarcity. We assign enormous value to whatever is rare or restricted. When something is hard to get, our brains automatically assume it must be precious. Madoff manufactured artificial scarcity, and people clawed over each other to hand him their fortunes. His returns told the same quiet lie. He never promised the absurd 50% that Ponzi did. Instead, he reported steady, modest, almost boring gains year after year in good markets and bad. Around 10 or 12%, consistently, like clockwork that never missed. And this is the genius that fooled the professionals. The very impossibility of his consistency should have been the giant red flag. No legitimate fund produces smooth, positive returns through every crash and crisis. The financial markets simply do not behave that way. It is unnatural. Few sharp analysts noticed exactly this. One investigator named Harry Markopoulos spent years warning regulators that Madoff's numbers were mathematically impossible to achieve legitimately. He laid out the evidence in painful detail. And here is the tragedy that should infuriate you. Nobody wanted to listen. The regulators dismissed the warnings. The investors did not want to hear it either. They were making money, or so they believed. And the human mind has a remarkable ability to ignore any truth that threatens a comfortable illusion. This is the most important lesson so far. The scam survived not because it was clever, but because everyone involved had a powerful emotional reason to believe it was real. The lie was profitable, prestigious, and comforting, and so the truth was unwelcome. Now, this brings us to the deepest question of all, the one neuroscientists have actually studied in laboratories. What is physically happening inside the human brain when greed takes over? Because the answer reveals why even you, knowing everything you now know, could still fall victim. Let us go inside the brain itself, because this is where the real war is fought. When you anticipate a financial reward, your brain releases a chemical called dopamine. And dopamine does something fascinating and dangerous. It does not just make you feel good. It makes you crave more. Neuroscientists have discovered something crucial. The dopamine hit is strongest not when you receive the reward, but when you anticipate it. The thrill of the expected payday is more chemically powerful than the payday itself. Your brain becomes addicted to the anticipation of getting rich. This is the exact same neural pathway exploited by gambling and by drug addiction. When a victim sees their investment statement showing fabulous fake profits, they get a genuine chemical high. They are, in a very real biological sense, getting high on the fantasy of wealth. Now layer on another force, one that fraudsters have weaponized brilliantly in the modern era: the fear of missing out. We are social creatures, terrified of being left behind while everyone around us prospers. This fear is older than money itself, wired deep into our survival instincts. Watch how the two forces combine into a perfect trap. The dopamine pulls you forward with the promise of pleasure, while the fear of missing out pushes you from behind with the dread of regret. Caught between them, your rational mind simply shuts down. And here is the tension that defines every bubble in history. The more people who join, the more real it feels. Social proof, the assumption that if everyone is doing it, then it must be safe, overrides every warning sign your logic tries desperately to raise. This explains the most baffling part of all financial manias. The point of maximum danger is also the point of maximum confidence. Right before the collapse, when the scheme is most fragile, the euphoria is at its absolute peak, and skepticism feels almost insane. Think about what that means for you personally. The very feeling of certainty, that warm conviction that this opportunity is different and safe, is itself a symptom of the trap closing. Your confidence is not protecting you. It is the bait working exactly as designed. This is why intelligence offers almost no protection. In fact, studies suggest that smart people are sometimes easier to scam because they are better at constructing sophisticated rationalizations for why this time, this deal, is the rare exception to every rule. Before I reveal the final and most dangerous trick, I want to pause for just one moment. If this breakdown of the hidden psychology is opening your eyes, do me a small favor and subscribe to the channel. This is the kind of knowledge that genuinely protects people, and I want it to reach more of them. Now, with all of this understood, you might think you are finally safe. You know about authority, scarcity, dopamine, and social proof. But the final psychological weapon is the one that survives even after you know everything. And modern technology has made it deadlier than ever. The old scams required charm, patience, and physical presence. Today's predators need none of that. The internet has industrialized fraud, allowing a single criminal to target thousands of victims simultaneously from anywhere on Earth, hiding behind a glowing screen and a fake smile. Consider the rise of what investigators chillingly call pig butchering scams. The name comes from the practice of fattening a pig before slaughter. The scammer builds a slow, patient, emotional relationship with the victim, often romantic, over weeks or even months before money is ever mentioned. This exploits perhaps the most powerful human drive of all, the longing for connection. The victim is not chasing wealth at first. They are chasing love, friendship, intimacy. By the time the investment opportunity appears, the emotional trust is already total and completely unshakable. The modern twist is cryptocurrency, which has become the perfect tool for these crimes. It is complex enough to confuse ordinary people, decentralized enough to evade regulators, and irreversible enough that once your money is gone, it is truly gone forever, with no bank to call. And notice how the old psychology simply puts on new clothing. The fake authority becomes a slick trading app with fabricated charts. The social proof becomes screenshots of other investors' supposed profits. The scarcity becomes a limited time token sale with a ticking countdown clock designed to panic you. Here's the tension of our age. We believe technology has made us smarter and more protected, with reviews, verification, and instant information at our fingertips. But the same technology has given predators perfect masks, infinite reach, and the ability to manufacture flawless illusions of legitimacy. The fake trading platforms are the cruelest innovation of all. Victims log in and watch their balance grow day after day, feeling brilliant and successful. They can even withdraw a small amount early, which cements their trust completely and convinces them to invest far more. But that growing number on the screen is pure fiction. A few lines of code designed to trigger that same dopamine high we discussed earlier. The moment the victim tries to withdraw the full amount, the excuses begin. Taxes, fees, verification problems. The wall goes up. By then, the psychological hooks are so deep that many victims refuse to believe they have been scammed, even when family members beg them to stop. They send more money, trying to unlock the fortune that was never real, sinking deeper with every desperate transfer. So we have traveled from postal coupons in 1920 to crypto wallets today, and the technology has changed beyond recognition. But the human vulnerabilities have not changed at all, which finally brings us to that single most dangerous psychological trick I promised you at the very beginning. Here it is, the final and most dangerous weapon in the entire arsenal of fraud. And the disturbing truth is that the con artist does not even have to deploy it, because you do it to yourself. It is called the optimism bias, and nobody is immune. The optimism bias is the deeply rooted human belief that bad things happen to other people, not to us. Every victim of every scam in history shared one identical thought before they lost everything. They thought, "I am too smart to be fooled by something like this." Do you see the terrible trap now? The very belief that you are immune is the exact crack through which every fraudster enters. Confidence is not a shield. It is a blindfold. The moment you stop watching for the trap is the moment you walk into it. This is why fraud investigators, people who study these schemes for a living, will privately admit that they too could be fooled by the right scam at the right moment. They respect the danger precisely because they have stopped believing in their own immunity. So what is the actual defense? It is not intelligence, because we have seen that intelligence fails. It is not skepticism alone, because skepticism can be charmed away. The real defense is something far simpler and far harder. It is structural humility, a system that does not rely on your willpower. Build rules that protect you from your own future self. Never invest in anything you cannot clearly explain to a child. Treat guaranteed returns as a guaranteed lie. And whenever you feel that urgent, euphoric certainty that you must act now, recognize that feeling itself as the alarm bell. Because here is the synthesis of everything we have explored. Every scam, from Ponzi to Madoff to the crypto predators of today, works by hijacking the best parts of human nature. Our trust, our hope, our desire to belong, our dreams of a better life. The fraudster is not exploiting your weakness. He is exploiting your humanity, the very qualities that make you a good and trusting person. And that is why this knowledge matters so deeply, because awareness is the one weapon they cannot charm away or manufacture around. You now understand the machinery. You can see the levers of authority, scarcity, dopamine, social proof, and that final, fatal optimism bias. You will never look at a too-good-to-be-true opportunity the same way again. That recognition is your armor, and you earned it. If this changed the way you see money, trust, and human nature, then you absolutely need to watch our deep dive next on how cult leaders use these exact same psychological weapons to control entire communities. The overlap will genuinely disturb you. Click it now, and I will see you there.